He wasn't a prophet. He wasn't a priest. He wasn't even a believer. He was a soldier, a nameless face in the crowd, trained to obey without question. On that day, beneath the scorching sun of Golgotha, he raised a hammer and drove it through the hands of the most important man who ever walked the earth. But what happened to him after that moment? What was the final fate of the soldier who crucified Jesus Christ? Today, you're about to discover a dark and forgotten chapter, a fate shrouded in mystery, guilt, and possibly redemption. And if you're someone who craves the truth behind ancient secrets, spiritual awakenings, and the stories the world rarely dares to tell, this is the place for you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and join a community that doesn't just hear stories, we uncover legacies. Trust me, you won't see history the same after this. To understand the end of this soldier's life, we must first understand the beginning. Not just his, but the brutal system he was part of. The Roman Empire ruled with an iron fist. Their method of execution, crucifixion, wasn't just about death. It was about humiliation, pain, fear. It was a public warning. Disobey Rome, and this is your fate. Roman soldiers weren't executioners by choice. They were ordered, trained, and conditioned to silence their emotions. Mercy had no place in their hearts. They carried out sentences as if nailing a man to a cross was no different than hammering wood. And on that day, one of those men was chosen to kill Jesus. To him, it was just another crucifixion, another troublemaker being silenced. He didn't know the scriptures. He didn't understand the whispers about a Messiah. He saw a condemned man, beaten, bleeding, already half dead. But something was different this time. As he laid Jesus onto the beam, aligning the arm with the wood, Jesus looked at him, not with hatred, not with fear, but with a gaze that pierced deeper than any sword. Still, he lifted the hammer, one blow, then another, and another, each strike echoing not just through the hills, but through history. The sky began to darken. The earth trembled. Even the crowd, once screaming for blood, fell into an eerie silence. And the soldier, he stood still. Sweat poured from his brow, but it wasn't just the heat. For the first time, something stirred within him, a strange sense of guilt, a whisper of doubt. Was this really just another execution? And then the realization. As Jesus took his final breath and cried out, the soldier looked up and spoke words that would echo across time. Truly, this was the Son of God. That sentence didn't come from duty. It came from awakening, from horror, from the instant realization that he had just taken part in the death of someone divine. From that moment on, everything changed for him. His nights were no longer silent. He was haunted by memories, the cries, the blood, the eyes of the man on the cross. Some say he was consumed by madness. Others say he abandoned the military and went into hiding. But the man who lifted that hammer never returned home the same. He carried a burden, one that no one could see, but that crushed him more than any Roman sword. Ancient Christian tradition gives this man a name, Longinus. It's believed he was the very soldier who pierced Jesus' side with a spear, fulfilling the prophecy that not a bone of his would be broken. And after witnessing the death of Christ, Longinus didn't vanish. According to Eastern Orthodox belief, he left the army, fled Rome, and lived in isolation. He became a follower of the very man he helped kill, and in doing so, he embraced a path of repentance, turning his curse into a calling. But not all legends are so hopeful. Other stories tell of a much darker fate, one where Longinus was tormented by visions, plagued by voices, driven to madness. That he wandered alone, never able to forgive himself, always chased by the sound of hammer on nail. Some say he went blind, others that he took his own life. Whether saint or lost soul, his ending remains a mystery, buried in time, debated by scholars, feared by the faithful. But maybe the real truth isn't about how he died. Maybe it's about what he became, because if even the man who physically crucified Jesus could find light after the darkness, what does that say about the power of forgiveness, about redemption, about the weight we all carry, and the possibility of laying it down? You see, this isn't just the story of a Roman soldier. This is our story. Every one of us has driven nails, in words, in actions, in silence. We've all in some way rejected what is good. But the story of the soldier reminds us that guilt doesn't have to be the final chapter, that even those who fall the hardest can rise if they're willing to look up. And maybe that's why you're here, not just to hear what happened to a man 2,000 years ago, but to reflect on what's happening within you right now. Because history doesn't repeat, it reflects. And the hammer's still in our hands. But what if the soldier's journey wasn't about damnation, but destiny? After the crucifixion, early writings and oral traditions began to spread, especially among early Christians hiding in fear. One of those stories spoke of a Roman centurion who left everything behind. He abandoned Rome, his rank, his armor, and wandered east, carrying only the guilt of what he had done. He reached a remote region known as Cappadocia, present-day Turkey. There, it said, he lived in a cave, alone, fasting, praying, weeping every day before a simple wooden cross he had built with his own hands. In those long, silent nights, he wasn't just seeking forgiveness, he was trying to understand why. Why was he chosen? Why him? He could have been stationed anywhere else. But instead, he was the one who struck the nails. And that question, that aching why, became his obsession. Some say he came to believe that even in his sin, he had fulfilled prophecy, that he had played a role in the greatest story ever told, not as a villain, but as a vessel. Over time, those who lived nearby began to speak of a strange man who lived in the hills, one who never harmed anyone, who spoke with a quiet fire in his eyes. They said he healed the sick with his hands, that he wept with those who mourned, that he warned everyone of how far darkness can take a soul, but also how deep mercy can reach. Whether myth or miracle, we may never know, but in some traditions, that man was eventually martyred, beheaded by the same empire he once served. The same sword that once gave him power now took his life. Centuries later, the church would name him Saint Longinus, the soldier who crucified Christ and later died for him. His story became a paradox. The image of a man who was once a symbol of brutality turned into a symbol of grace. It's the ultimate transformation. And whether you believe in the legends or not, there's something undeniably powerful about this idea, that no one is beyond redemption. Even in the darkest hour, light finds a way to break in. And that brings us here to you. You didn't hammer the nails. You weren't there on that hill. But maybe you've carried guilt of your own. Maybe there's something you regret, something you've buried deep. This story isn't about punishment. It's about the human capacity to change, to confront who we've been and decide who we want to become. Think about it. The very first person to recognize Jesus as the Son of God after his death wasn't a disciple, wasn't a priest. It was the one who crucified him, the soldier. That's not just a plot twist. It's a divine statement, a message written not in ink, but in blood and redemption. That means there's hope for you, for me, for anyone willing to drop the hammer and look up. Even today, some Christian traditions preserve relics said to be linked to Longinus, like the Holy Lance, also known as the Spear of Destiny. Legend claims this was the very weapon used to pierce Jesus' side, that it remained for centuries in the hands of emperors and kings, believed to hold divine power, a cursed artifact that brought victory to those who held it and destruction when it was lost. Whether real or symbolic, this lance became a symbol of divine judgment, tied eternally to the man who used it. And with every passing century, the mystery deepens. Was Longinus chosen or condemned? Some historians argue that the church transformed Longinus into a saint, not because of who he was, but because of what he represented. The worst of humanity, capable of change, a story that shouts a simple truth. No matter how far you've fallen, no matter what you've done, there is a road back. But it's not painless. Redemption comes with weight. It demands honesty. It demands facing the darkness inside and choosing light anyway. And maybe that's the real reason this story matters. Because today, the world is full of people holding hammers, people passing judgment, hurting others in the name of power, pride, or fear. We all carry our own crosses, or nail others to theirs. But the story of the soldier shows us that even those who take part in destruction can become messengers of hope, not because they deserve it, but because grace doesn't work that way. Grace isn't earned, it's given. So as we close this chapter, ask yourself, what part are you playing in your own story? Are you carrying the hammer? Are you the one hanging on the cross? Or are you the one waking up, finally realizing the weight of what you've done, and ready to step into something new? You see, this video isn't just a history lesson. It's a mirror, a warning, and an invitation. And if you're still here, that means you're the kind of person who looks deeper, who questions more, who's not afraid to explore the shadows to find the truth. That's rare, that's powerful, and that's exactly why this channel exists, to bring you stories like this, real, raw, and relentlessly human. So if this meant something to you, don't just disappear. Click that like button, not for me, but so this story reaches the next person who needs it. Someone out there feels too far gone. Let them know no one is. And subscribe, not to a channel, to a mission to resurrect stories that were buried, voices that were silenced, and truths that still burn through the centuries. Every week we dive into a new legend, a new soul, a new confrontation between man and the divine. Because these aren't just stories, they're survival guides for the human spirit. Thank you for watching, and remember, even the one who held the hammer was never beyond redemption.